Hello, and welcome to Zap the Gender Pay Gap, the podcast series where we expose the elephant in the room. The elephant's name, the gender pay gap. I am coming to you from Memphis, Tennessee, located on the banks of the mighty Mississippi River. Nestled in the southwest corner of the state, Memphis is home to the blues, barbecue, and so much more. I am your host, Gwendolyn Tucker.
Thank you so very much for joining me for this episode of Zap the Gender Pay Gap. I am your host, Gwendolyn Tucker. Look for me on Apple, Spotify, Google, YouTube, and other platforms where you find your favorite podcasts. And while you're there, please don't forget to like and subscribe. For review, I'd greatly appreciate it. It's April, spring has sprung, and so has the leak in the rain clouds. It seems as if it's raining all over the world, at least all over Memphis, but that's okay. That's what umbrellas are for, huh? Plus, I can practice dancing between the raindrops. Cool would that be? Yes, it's April. We're in Q2, quarter two, that is. On last week's episode, I told you that April was the time when my raise actually hit my bank account. Talk about good times. It was a celebration of sorts on my part and a recognition and reward on my employer's part of how I had performed and added value during the previous year. My boss was not evaluating me or who I was as a person. He was evaluating my performance, rating it as meets, exceeds, or does not meet expectations. Now, did you get your raise yet? No company can pay you what you're worth. Why? Because you're simply too valuable. But they can pay you what your contributions are worth. So, the annual review, rating, and raise is an exercise in recognizing and rewarding your contributions. I ask you before I ask you again, did you get your raise yet? If not, you're going to have to ask for it. I've said it before and I'll say it again. My mission in life is to leave each person and place better than I found them. One way I can do that is to show women how to close their pay gap. And I do it by exposing the elephant in the room. You know, the one that keeps a woman's pay less than it should be. And I do it by shining a bright spotlight and revealing what it has been trying to conceal. Another way I do it is by disclosing some pertinent facts about how this elephant maintains a foothold. And in doing so, we wind up getting the short end of the straw. The other way I do it is by showing you how to dispose of this elephant as well as its effects. And you can do that by finding and fixing the gender pay gap. And I would love to do that. And I'm willing to do that for every woman who will listen and who has the courage to act. Now, one way this elephant keeps a foothold on our pay is through the application or lack thereof of the performance management system in your company. Now, some organizations do performance management well, others do not. Some bosses do it well, some do not. According to Gallup, 6 in 10 employees report not getting meaningful feedback from their boss. That means that 4 in 10, or 40% of workers do. Now, my question to you is, are you in the 60% or the 40%? If you're in the 40%, it means your company and your immediate supervisor does a good job of letting you know what is expected and providing timely feedback on your performance. That's a good thing. If this describes your work situation, you're probably highly engaged, you like what you're doing, and you like who you're doing it with. But if you're in the 60%, that is, if you're unclear on what is expected and how you are performing compared to expectations, you've got some work to do. You're gonna have to ask for it. It may be hard to hear, but if you're unclear about something, you're gonna have to ask. My grandmother on my husband's side owned a salon. She called it Tucker's Beauty Nook. Her motto was, if your hair is not becoming to you, you should be coming to us. As my colleague and friend used to say, Gwendolyn, what's your point? My point in saying this is if your boss is not talking to you about your performance, you should be talking to your boss about it. If your boss is not giving you timely feedback on your performance, you should be asking for it. That's also true when it comes to talking about pay. As I mentioned before, some organizations do a good job at performance management, others do not. Some bosses are good at giving timely feedback and information about your raises. Some do not. If you work for one of those bosses, guess what? You're going to have to ask for it. Now, you might hate asking. I can relate. I do too sometimes. But I would rather ask than go without what is rightfully mine, especially in this situation. Now, on a previous episode, I shared 3 things I did in the first quarter of the year to get my ducks in a row, and I recommended that you do the same. There are 3 secrets that helped me set the stage for success at work. They were to compile my performance data from the prior year. I did this in the first 90 days, right? Number 2 was to calculate how well I did and rate my performance before finding out how my boss would rate my performance. And then 3, to clarify my goals, objectives, and expectations for the current year so I could get off and put my best foot forward. Now, if you took me up on my advice and you took action in the first 90 days of this year, you're sitting pretty. But if not, you may be a sitting duck. Why do I say that? Because if you are not proactive when it comes to taking care of business related to pay and performance, you will miss out on what is rightfully yours. The result, you will remain trapped in your pay gap. If your company has money in its budget for raises, don't you want yours? No, I would. I think it will look better in your bank account than remaining in theirs, don't you? Plus, if you earned an increase based on your contributions, don't you think it's only fair that you receive it? Now, I realize that money is not the only reason why women work, but it is one reason. Don't you agree? I've said it before, and I'll say it again. No company can pay us what we're worth. Why? Because we're simply too valuable. But they can pay us what our contributions are worth. It's Q2. If you have not discussed your annual review, rating, and raise with your boss yet, guess what? You're going to have to ask for it. Maybe you don't think you should have to ask. It's your boss's responsibility to work the performance management process and talk with you about your performance and pay. I get it. I agree. You're absolutely right. But if your boss has not come to you yet, what makes you think she or he will do so in the near future? Keep in mind that every day that passes is another day you stay in the dark about your pay and performance. I don't like being kept in the dark. I imagine you don't either, especially when it comes to pay. Remember what I said about my grandmother on my husband's side who owned the salon, whose motto was, if your hair is not becoming to you, you should be coming to us? My point is, if your boss is not talking to you, you should be talking to your boss. If your boss is not giving you timely feedback on your pay and performance, you should be asking for it. So, what's your next move? If you're not sure, I can assist you with that. Now, I get to fulfill my dream of showing women how to find and fix their pay gap. One of those women could be you. I have a few one on one coaching slots available. If you're interested in setting up a call to find out if we are a good fit, then message me. Go to gwendolynjtucker.com and click on contact. A link is in the description box below, so reach out to me there. Women, you work hard for your money. I can show you how to take home all of it. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of my podcast. I truly appreciate you and your support. On the next episode, I will show you how to improve your understanding of the pay and performance system to make sure that you're connected and to increase the chances that you get your next raise. If you like what you hear here, please invite another woman in your world to listen in. I look forward to seeing you here next Wednesday at noon Central Standard Time for the next episode of Zap the Gender Pay Gap. Until then, please be well.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of Zap the Gender Pay Gap. Please rate, review, and subscribe to or follow me wherever you get your favorite podcast. I am your host, Gwendolyn Tucker. Thanks so much for listening. See you next time.